psychology for 20 years, and I've worked in various aspects of evaluation, counseling, identification of anyone from a 2-year old through a 21-year old. So supporting children with ADHD or learning differences. And as a parent of a child with ADHD or learning differences, it's important to be equipped with these strategies and resources to provide the best support. And this presentation is aimed to guide you through the various aspects of creating a nurturing environment for your child. We are going to give Ms. Anna said, a 15-minute time period at the end for questions. But if you do have something that's very specific, do feel free to ask it. We had a little bit of technology issues, so bear with us. I'm going to give an overview, and it's going to be kind of structured at first. We're going to talk about understanding the challenges of ADHD and various learning disabilities, navigating educational settings, understanding the unique challenges with ADHD that we find in traditional classroom settings. As I was looking at the different people, different parents who have signed up for this workshop, I saw that we have elementary parents, we have middle school or junior high parents, as well as high school parents. So you may have something that's very specific to your child that you can feel free to ask. I'm going to try to cover this workshop to cover all levels of our students that we have here in the district. We're also going to talk about the social and emotional impact, insight into the emotional and social hurdles that often arise for these children, and how parents can provide the necessary support for them. As well as the third part, we're going to talk about effective interventions for ADHD and explore what some of those look like. Medications alone should never be an intervention plan. Okay, I'm going to start just a little bit by talking about, of course, what ADHD is. And Dr. Barkley is the major guru in the field of ADHD. And Dr. Barkley tells us that ADHD is an inhibition disorder. It's a failure to develop the appropriate inhibition of your behavior. And this will often emerge in the preschool years. And its first sign is usually hyperactivity. Although it doesn't have to be hyperactivity, but that is what we often first identify in kids with ADHD. It's students or an individual who's just behaving way too much. They're not suppressing the irrelevant behavior the way that other children are able to do so. We'll see this in their motor activities. There's just a lot of action coming out of this child, and we'll see it in their emotional impulsiveness. When looking at what a family needs to understand, if they're really going to appreciate that, is both the nature of this disorder in a child and what it means for the raising and management of the child successfully. Let's see here. All right. We want to talk a little bit about creating a supportive home environment. So, those structured routines that are going to help kids with ADHD. Implementing those consistent routines and schedules to provide the stability and predictability for your child. So, having creative spaces for them to have those outlets, designing, stimulating, and organized spaces that cater to your child's learning and leisure activities, as well as that open communication. Fostering an environment where open and sincere communication between family members is encouraged. A lot of times, kids with ADHD, get in trouble a lot, right? They're constantly in trouble at home. They're constantly in trouble at school. They have a hard time doing the executive functioning or the frontal lobe type of behavior, of control of our behaviors. So those are some of the things that we're going to kind of look at. When we talk about looking at the very elementary stage of this disorder, it is a developmental disability. That's really the first thing that you need to know about it. There's two psychological traits that are not developing in this child on time. So let's clarify what a developmental disability is. This means you're showing age inappropriate behavior. It doesn't mean that your behavior is pathological. It doesn't mean that it's not appropriate. It's just that it's delayed. It's a developmental delay. Developmental disorders differ from psychopathologies. A psychopathology is more where you have an aberration in your behavior that we can recognize at any age. For example, if you have bipolar disorder, we would be able to recognize that at a very young age. If you have schizophrenia, we'd be able to recognize that. Major depression disorder, autism, all of those conditions that are abnormal from the typical developing child. Autism is it really applies to the degree of the delay that we're talking about. Children with ADHD will go through some stages that others would go through with their normal development, but just not at the same time. And when these traits reach their ultimate maturity, which is usually around 30 years old, so it takes a long time to fully develop, the person with ADHD will be kind of leveling off to a degree that's well behind where the general population would be. So that delay doesn't mean a lag. It doesn't mean that it's temporary. It's a chronic lag. If you have ADHD, you have ADHD for life. Um, the important thing to remember is the difference between this child and other children is that it's a quantitative disorder. It's like someone sitting next to you who is shorter than you or taller than you. It's like someone who's more athletic than you or less athletic than you. These are not qualitative differences; they're quantitative differences. So that's what separates your child from others: is the degree of the delay in the distinction. So the first deficit to appear is inhibition. The failure to develop is the appropriate ability to inhibit your behaviors and control your behaviors. And we see that coming out when these kids are in preschool, kindergarten, first grade. And it'll often emerge, in the classroom, but you may also see some of the behaviors at home. Okay. So it's just those kids who are not suppressing irrelevant behavior the way that other kids are able to. We'll see it in their motor actions. There's just a lot of motor activity coming out of this child. We'll see it in their verbal behavior. There's lots of words coming out of this individual. We'll see it in both their intrusive and disruptive motor and verbal behavior as well. But along with that, there's the cognitive impulsiveness. Okay. That's that snap decision making, that quickness to do the first thing that kind of pops into your head without due delay and due diligence, thinking about what the consequences of your actions will be. And then we'll see the restlessness, not just through the gross motor activity, but the seat restlessness, which affects their school performance more than the gross motor activity does. But it will decline with age. And so the term ADHD, when we're getting more to high school, looks a lot less like hyperactivity that we're seeing in that preschool and early school times. It looks more like making bad decisions, impulsiveness, those kind of things, restless. And by adolescence, it's nearly gone. And by, adulthood, it's truly that internal state. Is that feeling inwardly of a need to be busy and doing multiple things. And it's a busyness of one's mind and one's ideas. Okay. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm working on the technology here. Parents can help by providing a checklist of routines. For example, a morning routine may include, make your bed, brush your teeth, get dressed, have breakfast, grab your lunch, and get your backpack. The key here is to prepare the night before by making a lunch ahead of time, laying out clothes, packing your backpack, and placing it by the door, those kind of things. And parents should ask kids with ADHD two questions. One, what do you have to do? And two, when will you do it? Okay. Here's an example. There's so many resources out there, and I've got a lot of resources for you at the end of this presentation for you to access online, books, various things. But here's an example of a routine that works for an organized day for your ADHD child. And this is provided by attitudemag.com. But there's a sample homework routine here, like have a snack, unwind from school, settle your child into his regular homework spot. Be sure all tools are available, their pencil, paper, calculator, reference books, all of those kind of things. And then from 3:35 to 4:30, this example shows your child doing the homework. You stay around to answer questions and monitor breaks, like where they can stretch, go to the bathroom, get a drink. And then at the end, check the student's work and calmly go over anything they should edit, but don't do it for them. Offer very specific praise for good work. Tell them, that was a very good sentence. I like the way that you did, or you came up with this idea for this, assignment or whatever it is, but offer very specific praises. But here's some very good examples of routines that you can have at home. It is important for parents to establish effective school communication, and that will include regular updates, advocating for your child, and building relationships. Building those strong and transparent relationships with your child's teachers or and other school staff is very key to facilitating mutual understanding and support. Saying my child has, meeting with the teacher at the beginning of the year, saying, letting them know my child has this and this is what has worked very well for them in the past. Letting them know, that you are very involved with your student. You want good homeschool communication so that you can support your child at home. If they've missed part of the instruction at school, you might can help them, go back over and reteach that lesson at home and things like that. A lot of practice and, repeated review can be very important as well. Okay. Personalized learning plans. So, this is what we do at school. We identify the struggles that the child's having. Many children are diagnosed with ADHD, but what is that unique child's needs? Understanding how to identify those specific learning challenges that your child may be experiencing, and tailoring those strategies for your child. So, for example, your child might have ADHD, and the executive functioning deficit that they're dealing with has to do with working memory. So, therefore, they need some external supports to help their working memory. They might need what I call like a little recipe book, like a little small quarter-inch binder where they have frequently, misspelled words. They have a multiplication table. They have the grammar rules. They have all of those kind of things where they can easily access those. So their mind is not caught up with trying to remember them, but they're more focused on completing the actual work. Some people, mistakenly think that it's just a matter of get back to work, get back to work. But there are, many deficits that go along with ADHD, and we want to evaluate the progress the child's making at school. For example, are they continuing to have problems getting, their work turned in? Okay, so what are we currently doing to get their work turned in? Is it they're, not starting the assignment, they're not finishing the assignment, or they're completing their work, but they're just not getting it turned in at the end of the period? Those kind of things we've got to really break down and look and make sure we've got an effective plan for your specific student. Here's a list of some interventions known to be effective for attention problems. So we either have the class-wide peer tutoring, computer-assisted instruction, contingency management, daily behavior report cards, modified task presentation changes, multimodal interventions, parent training, like we're doing here today, and self-management training. And so if we're looking at ADHD being that problem with inhibition, that problem with self-regulating our own behaviors, being able to look forward and planning task and motivation and things like that. Self-managing management training, while it's hard early on, we can start it with baby steps early on and increase it as we go through middle school and into high school, because ultimately that's what's going to help them in the workplace, in college, and all of that, is to be aware that they have this problem and to be able to use the coping strategies that they need to. Um, let's see. Children with ADHD are 11 times more likely to develop oppositional defiant disorder within 2 years of the onset of their ADHD as well. And this is kind of treated as a comorbid condition, although it may change, in the future to more of a European model where they kind of go hand in hand. But if you put the emotion back into ADHD, you do see that connection right into ODD. It's only going to take one more symptom when you're looking across the diagnostic threshold, or in other words, some scholars report that ADHD causes ODD. So really, if you look at it, ODD is the inability to manage frustration, impatience, and anger, and that will set you up for the second component of ODD, which is that interaction conflict, the defiance, the arguing. But the first four symptoms out of the eight for ODD are mood, like that anger, temper, hostility, being easily annoyed, irritable, all of those kind of things. So when you look at it, it is part of the symptoms of ADHD. Now we know, why we treat ADHD, particularly with medications, that we get nearly as much behavior help from medications with ADHD meds as we do with it helping with ODD behaviors as well. We get a reduction in those behaviors. The thing with the that ODD kind of has the component of that social conflict. Um, but the mood component is an ADHD component as well. Sorry, I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat. So now we're going to kind of return to that emotional part of ADHD as it and kind of help families kind of understand some of the life course risks that you're looking at with ADHD. 50 to 70% of children with ADHD can be rejected by close friendships by second grade. It is, in fact, one of the most devastating consequences of this disorder is that inability to keep and maintain those sustained friendships with other children, and it can be very heartbreaking for parents to see that. Like, is your child being invited to go to the movies? Is your child being invited to sleepovers? Those kind of social events that other children are celebrating. And, but it's that emotional impulsiveness because friends tend to forgive our restlessness. They tend to forgive the working memory problems and they tend to forgive your distractibility. But where the kids run into problems is that impulsiveness, that anger, the hostility, the quickness to emote, various emotions and not be able to inhibit those emotions, the too quick to anger, all of that. Employers, when you're in a job, are not as tolerant of that as well. So addressing those things in school and learning coping strategies for it is, with that self management training is very, very key to success in the future. And I mentioned executive functioning. Executive functioning is almost synonymous with ADHD. Now, executive functioning can stand on its own. It can be part of various, disabilities. You can hear, parents with autism talking about executive functioning deficits in their children. You can hear, parents with mood disorders talking about executive functioning deficits. But it pretty much goes hand in hand with ADHD. And so executive functioning deficits are often problematic with ADHD. They're the deficits in working memory. These can manifest as difficulties memorizing factual information like math facts, difficulty taking notes, being prepared, and having less ability to pursue those long term goals. Working memory in real life can look like difficulty following spoken directions, like, go straight here, at the roundabout, take the second left, and the building's, on the right opposite the church. Students with diminished executive functioning problem solving abilities can have difficulty generating options, thinking through problems, less flexibility, organization, and less ability to think sequentially. They can have difficulty shifting between different aspects of tasks, struggle to take notes, and have difficulty checking their work without structure or guidance, and forget to hand in the completed work. They can get stuck trying to figure out how to organize their thoughts and, for example, to write on a paper. Therefore, it's hard to even begin the work. It's hard, again, that cognitive flexibility, that cognitive ability to begin, sustain the task, complete the task, and follow through, and then turn that in. So, some of the things that you can do is look at technology, especially when you go through school and get in higher grades. But you can use quite a number of these in elementary as well. And I put some examples here if you want to take a snapshot of some of these, but these may include speech to text. I gave some examples of those. Audiobooks are very, very helpful for students with ADHD and other learning disabilities. When producing written material, technology may include mind mapping, which is brainstorming and organization kind of tools like MindView Online and MindMaster and Idea Mapper. Voice typing is a built-in feature on Chrome, Mac, and Windows, as well as grammar checking, because these kids are often going to leave off the ends of words like checking. They'll write check and leave off the ing and, things of that nature. Technology to help with keeping organized can include a Google Calendar, Google Keep, Microsoft Lists. Those are all pretty much free if you have access to Google. Going paperless is also recommended. Scanning documents in because if you've ever looked in an ADHD kid's backpack, it's just a trashed mess, and you have to kind of help them pull everything out and go through it and keep organized. So that's one more tool that is going to help them because papers can just be unmanageable. So let's see here, annotating PDFs. So there's a few examples up here of how to mark them up, but I also included Notability and Good Notes. Those are very helpful apps when you're taking notes, when you're organizing notes on iPads, Windows. Those apps will help you with any of those. But there's a lot of apps there to help you out there now. The next thing that we're talking about with ADHD is building a supportive network. So, community engagement. So, don't be isolated. Reach out. Discover local. We're in the greater Houston area. There's so many groups out there for ADHD and other learning disabilities. There's community resources that can provide valuable assistance. There's online resources, and I put a number of examples of those at the end of this presentation that you can take a quick snapshot of. Extended family involvement. Sometimes it can be very tiring and exhausting when you're really, really trying. And, extended family can give you a break, and let you just come back refreshed for that self care of parents of children with ADHD. But also, they can help support a lot of the intervention strategies that you're trying to implement at home as well. They can just, be a very strong and reliable support system. And then professional collaboration, collaborating with educators, counselors, and therapists who can help contribute to your child's holistic development as well. All right. So we're going to look also at managing behavior and self-esteem. Okay, so positive reinforcement. Our kids with ADHD are always hearing, "Don't do that," or "Stop that," or whatever, or "You did this wrong," and all of those kind of things. So looking at maybe a 5 to 1 positive to negative ratio of interactions, and it can even sound nice. It could be like, "Oh, you did this problem wrong. You need to correct that," even though it's in a nice voice. It's still considered a negative interaction. So going back and providing that specific positive praise, and things like that. "You did this well. I like your ideas here." Or, "You have great ideas. Let me get those down on paper for you. You're having just trouble getting them down. Let me help you with that." Those kind of things. And so implementing a very positive behavior management, system at home can be just as important as doing that at school. Emotional well-being, supporting your child's emotional well-being and promoting a healthy self-image through nurturing and guidance. A lot of kids with ADHD end up feeling like they never can do anything right. These are the kids that are always in trouble. They get everything taken away from them, even the door taken off their rooms sometimes. They can't play their video games. They can't, go out with their friends and all of that, and it's still not working. And this can start really impacting their self-confidence, their self-esteem, and you really start seeing it by upper elementary going into middle school. And so really, promoting the other areas that are easy for them and letting them know that while we're just not there yet, having that growth mindset. You can do it. You can do this as well as any other child. We will get there, and this is the tools that we will give you to get there, and let them know that you love and support them no matter what, just for who they are. But that you do see that self-confidence and self-esteem taking a pretty hard hit, so you have to work extra hard to support their emotional well-being. Social skills development. So exploring methods to enhance your child's social skills and interactions with peers in various settings. When I was talking a little bit earlier about that inhibition, that being able to control, your emotions and your anger and not being so quick to pop off to your friends and things like that. Keeping an adult nearby to facilitate some of those social interactions can be very helpful. It can also be very helpful to have one-on-one play instead of one on 3 or 4 or more kids, so that you can really control and help guide and teach some of those behaviors. Have 30-minute play dates, and things like that for our littles as they're coming up, where parents are there to guide that. Sorry, what about those that have inattentive ADHD minus the H? And we can talk a little bit about that as well. So that's going to look very similar in the classroom, because we're still talking about the ability to inhibit. So our ability to inhibit in kids with ADHD is not absent; it's just impaired. It's just affected. So while we may hear someone knock on the door and we may not pay attention to that, they have to look to the door and they have to, kind of see what's going on. And then the working memory component comes into it, because then you look back at what you're doing, and while another student may look to the door and then re-engage with their task, kids with more of the ADD, more of the inattentive portion of it, they will have a hard time returning to tasks, knowing where they were. They again, it goes back to the executive functioning deficits. They need more help getting started back on what they were doing, things of that nature. Okay, so we talked a little bit about specific positive feedback on your child's efforts. I put a few examples on here for you. I'm so proud of how you stuck with that assignment, even though it was very challenging. I like the way you communicated with your peers in order to come up with a solution, or your hard work on writing this paragraph really shows. And having that growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Again, I can't do that yet. So really practice changing the negative statements to more of a positive statement. Instead of saying, "Oh, I give up," say, "I'll try a new strategy." Instead of saying, "He's much better than I'll ever be," teach your child to say, "I'll figure out how." Instead of, "I really goofed up," "How can I do it better next time?" "I'll never tie my shoes. I need a little more practice with that." That's good enough. I will do my best. Okay. And remember to praise their efforts, not always the end product, because ADHD is very much a production deficit. When we're looking at therapy and interventions, um, we look at that professional assistance. We understand the different therapeutic options available and their potential impact on your child's development. If it's a new diagnosis, really, research all of that. Look at behavioral interventions, and that's where the school is really focusing their interventions, is on the behavioral side of it. It is up to a parent and their physician to talk about any other treatment options that they may need to explore. But exploring those behavior focused interventions and strategies that can help their progress at school is where your teachers are going to be. But you may also need a home behavioral intervention guide, especially if there's a lot of conflict where you're exhausted because you've told your child 15 times what to do, and they never kind of follow through with that. And that parenting child dynamic can definitely suffer from that, because there's not those positive experiences in between that. So looking at a home behavioral intervention program can be very beneficial. What I tell parents sometimes is, take some cards, write down some of the common behavior problems that you have, and then come up with a red light, kind of procedure to it. Don't always go to the, worst punishment. Have like kind of a green light, yellow light, red light. So, the first time or two that you do this, we're going to have this kind of mild desist. The third or fourth, fifth time, we're going to kind of go to the yellow light, this, a little bit more moderate desist. And then the third time, have, then you're in trouble, those kind of things. Because what you don't want to do is take consequences away from a kid with ADHD. They need the consequences to help them actually have the motivation to complete work. For example, at school, you're going to need that timeline, that deadline. Otherwise, it may, keep getting procrastinated because of the executive functioning deficits. It'll be like, okay, I can put this off because I don't have to turn it in, on the due date. I have 3 extra days. Well, that can snowball quickly if you don't put a time limit on it like that. Finding the right fit. Guidance on identifying the most suitable therapeutic approaches to meet your child's specific needs and preferences. And in this day and age, we have parents a lot of times can look at various things online, virtual things like this training and things like that, where they can find out information. But definitely, we want parents to nurture their child's strengths and their interests. Let
Shana, excuse me, before you continue, I think there's a question that maybe you can
Sure.
answer now. It's from Miss Emily Pirella, and she says, some of us have no extended family or any other help.
Mhm. It's true.
She feels really isolated and stressed, and she's asking what kind of specialists can come to the home.
So absolutely, there's various specialists that will help create a behavior home program like that. For example, like if your child attended my school, I might just talk to you about it as the LSSP for that campus, the school psychologist for that campus. If you are, that might be one option that you start with, just to find out some resources and some information and get some good information from them. Talking to your teacher and finding out some of the things that they do in the class might relieve some of that at home. Developing that home schedule, like I gave you an example of earlier, that can help it. But also having a pre-planned balance of positive behavior intervention supports, just like we have here at school, have one here at home. So, for example, if you do X, Y, and Z, and I give you a little visual checklist for it, and I reinforce you for each one of those things, then you've accomplished the task. Then we're going to build in a reward system for that. So, having some of those same things that we shape behavior with positively here at school, having those at home. And I didn't get to read the chat, but I saw something about CBT flash across there. And cognitive behavioral therapy approaches are absolutely research based to help kids with ADHD as well. So those techniques, those same techniques. So when you look at asking yourself questions like the two examples that I gave you earlier, those can be very helpful. But setting your child up for success. Did that answer your question?
What they were asking, the CBT, they were asking if there's any therapist in the area that you would recommend.
Absolutely. We have a number of therapists in the area. We actually have a sheet that the district sends out. Gulf Coast is a very good resource. Gulf Coast is your state of Texas, your local state agency. So they have all kinds of resources available. My email is jbutler@albinisd.net, jbutler@albinisd.net. If you'll drop me an email, I'm happy to send you the district resource list of different therapists and different people. Yes, thank you, Anna. In the area that we provide out. We don't really show favoritism to any, but it's a list of people that you can access. So definitely, if you're interested in getting a private therapist to look at cognitive behavioral therapy and look at a home behavior intervention plan, so that there's less of that angst and that emotional regulation problems, because you've got consequences set out, you've got limits set out, and all of those, you've got guidelines. And so it's not you and the child fighting, but it's, let's look, this is the expectation and this is what's going to happen. And also that saves parents from becoming emotional as well. It's more of a just versus a reactive kind of situation, those kind of things. Um, so those are all great ideas to help you at home work with your child with ADHD. Physical activities, while a physical program itself alone is not is has not proven to be an intervention strategy, it's very important to not use that as a punishment to take away their physical activities. So, for example, if your child plays sports, or if your child rides their bike, or if your child takes a walk, and do all of those kind of things, don't take that away. Allow them to have that physical outlet, because sometimes when we take that away, there's nowhere where they can release it. And then you're going to turn into more of mood problems and frustration where they can't get that out. Cultivating a passion for learning. So fostering a love of learning, because school can be identified by some of these kids as not a good thing. Like, right? It's harder for me. They recognize that it's harder for them. They see that they're struggling more, or they get their name called more in class, or the other kids kind of, say, don't do that. I can't do my work, all of that negative feedback, those kind of things. Then sometimes learning can be seen as a bad thing. So we want to make sure that, because they have the same intellect as any other typically developing child, we want to make sure that we explore and nurture and foster your child's unique interests and curiosities to, make sure they want to read, make sure that they want to, go to school, and all of those kind of things. Here's a quick list of some things that typically don't work. Diets, so here's an example of some research that they did that, they tried to see if it was actually effective on ADHD, and it wasn't. Food or vitamin supplements, the exception here is the omega-3 fatty acids from fish or krill, not flax. Those do have mild, very mild benefits in very high doses, and they're widely held to be safe. Um, yeah, you're right about it. Kids don't get to go out for athletics if their grades are too low. So these kids aren't getting to do the things they need to do, like play football or whatever it is that they're interested in, and that is very unfortunate. Perceptual motor programs. This is where I was saying exercise programs alone aren't effective in remediating ADHD, but of course exercise is very good. You don't want to take that away, but it's not going to be the end all. Let's get them more exercise, and all of a sudden they're going to be able to produce their work and do all the things they need to do. So these perceptual motor programs have not shown research based true help for ADHD. And then the punishment paradigms here. Persons with ADHD are extremely resistant to punishment as a means of modifying behavior, except in the immediate presence of the punisher. So there's no generalizing here. So really, once again, using those positive behavioral supports with limits and consequences and things like that. So good. I'm glad that y'all are sharing resources with each other. Absolutely share those with each other. Parents, there's all kinds of chat groups and things like that to get on, to get ideas in local groups as well as other groups to get good ideas of things with kids with ADHD. And like I said, I'm going to provide some of these resources and additional supports here in a moment. Parental guidance, finding those valuable resources and guides, support networks that can offer parent insights and practical advice, the online communities that I was just talking about, and then the professional consultation. And again, that can be with your campus school psychologist, that can be with a private therapist. That there are various resources out there that are for you to help support you. Here's a guide, ADHD in school strategies to help with school success. It's a toolkit for parents of children with ADHD. This one's through CHAD. And then let's see, NASP, which is the National Association of School Psychologists. It has a primer for parents and educators as well. So CHAD, you can go to CHAD and actually put in your area, and you might be able to find a local group that way. Here's some reading resources. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but it is some books that parents have told me that they've really enjoyed. There's some books that other school psychologists and other specialists in the area have really, found very beneficial. Smart But Scattered and Smart But Scattered Teens. Those are my two most highly recommended books that I talk about all the time. Anything by Russell Barkley right here. He's got some on how to ADHD that deals with ADHD and motivation, because it is a motivation disability. And she's got a couple of really cute, she is a person herself with ADHD, and she's got a couple of really cute videos on how to bridge the motivation gap. And it lets us as parents understand why they're having trouble, why the planks aren't there to cross the motivation bridge. And it helps your child with ADHD understand how to put those planks there. For an example, she talks a little bit in one of the videos about how to set a false deadline. So something is due on the 15th. Well, I'm going to set a deadline for the 8th, the 12th, and the 14th for certain portions of stuff. And that way we can trick our brains into being able to be motivated, because a lot of kids with ADHD, they'll say, oh, they're not motivated. Oh, they're lazy, or they can't, complete the task and things like that. Another thing that she uses to kind of help her, and so I ordered this as well. It's just on Amazon. It's very cheap. I forgot. It was like between $5 and $15. But you can set the timer and say, okay, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes to write this paragraph. And what's different about this than other timers is because as you see the red line going down, it gives you a visual representation of where you are, because that will help, help the ADHD brain feel that pressure to get motivated and get that task completed. These are some of the references that I used, in creating this presentation, this parent workshop today. And a lot of these, I highly suggest you go to and look at the information and research the information. They have all kinds of tools that are available for parents, well, and teachers as well, parents and educators that are out there. Um, Going back to where we were talking about ADHD, the more inattentive type, where I forgot, was it you, Emily, that had some questions about that, or one of y'all had some questions about that? Talking a little bit about ADHD, it's it's not the problem. It's not a problem of perception or filtering of the processing. Um, it's more about again, the failure to direct our behavior. So that kid with inattention is going to have problems directing their behavior forward in time. So again, it's delayed input, endpoints in the life of those tasks and completing those goals. Not really knowing where they are in time, but only being present in the moment. Still having trouble linking their behavior with the consequences, because if I don't finish this, it's going to impact my grade. If I don't do this assignment, then, it's going to, my teacher is going to come and talk to me. I won't make my teacher happy, all of those kind of things. All right, so I think that we're right there. There's a lot more that I could share with you, but I think we're right there at that 45-minute mark where we're going to open it up to questions. And I want to be sure to answer any questions that you have.
I'm going to open the microphones from now so that they can ask questions if they want. So yes, the microphones are open now, parents, if you like to ask questions. But there's a couple in the chat. I don't know if you want to check those first.
Okay. Let's see.
So there was one about the kids not being able, kids don't get to try out for athletics activities if their grades are too low. My daughter wanted to try out for swimming and wasn't allowed. I really wanted her to be in a sport, as I thought it would benefit her in so many ways, including keeping her off electronics somehow. So I don't know if you know what the school do.
Oh no, it's absolutely right. They won't let you play the sports if the grades aren't there. So what I really recommend for that is that we try to give them other physical outlets, and everything. They might, for example, instead of being able to play on the school soccer team, you put them in private soccer or whatever. But the goal would be for them to play with their peers, right? We want peer acceptance. We want them to have friends. We want them to be able to play with the rest of the kids and not be kind of punished for their disability. So the goal or aim for that would be to look at the accommodations, to look at the tools that we're using both at school and at home to get that child's grades up so they can be successful in that part of their life as well and go and play those sports with their friends.
There's another question regarding the district policy. So is the district considering a policy to ensure that recess is not used as a disciplinary consequence? My child's teacher have mentioned that currently recess is the sole disciplinary measure employed. She's in second grade, and this practice has been ongoing since kindergarten. Additionally, it's concerning that this action is not tracked, and I have no information on how much recess she has missed due to behavior issues.
So have you reached out to your school psychologist on that campus to talk about helping that teacher find alternatives? Because just taking recess away is not going to be the most effective intervention to actually getting the child to behave. So we want to look at positive behavioral intervention supports. We want to keep consequences in, but look at what those consequences would be.